Hello, 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 my beautiful, powerful listeners. Are you ready for another episode of the Powerful Inc. Startup Stories? Well, you're going to want to listen to this one because Stephanie and I have already been chatting and it is fire, and I cannot wait to take you into her world and to share this incredible conversation that we're having. So Stephanie McPhail is the CEO and founder of Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, leaving a toxic relationship. And based on her own life experience and her own healing journey, she is a product of her work. And she, as a result of this, has created a life that she couldn't even have dreamed of, or even at one point thought possible for herself. So when we talk about setting ourselves free, sometimes there's big examples of it, and sometimes there's smaller examples. And so in today's chat, we just want to walk you through part and parcel of her leaving an 18-year career as a teacher to start a business and then meeting the man of her dreams and bringing him into the business. And now in a fairly sustainable revenue, but still looking to fine tune and improve business processes. So, we often are the idea and the sales, but businesses become like children, their own creation that require management. So there's just so much to talk about based on the work that she does, as well as her business journey. And I'm excited to take us on that journey. Welcome, Stephanie, to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share my journey with listeners and hopefully inspire those who need some inspiration.
Absolutely. Well, already in chatting with you, there's no doubt that that's going to happen. Yeah, super. So why don't you tell us a bit about, the how the concept came to be, and then what was it like to actually give it space to become a business?
Well, that's a really great question. So, I think I remember when I was like 17 years old and I was watching Wayne Dyer speak on PBS, and I told my parents, I was like, this guy's amazing. Like, he's such a great speaker. And I said, I want to be a public speaker. Mm-hmm. And they were like, so that means you want to be a teacher? And I'm like, no, I want to be a public speaker. And so, flash forward, I became a teacher. I taught for 18 years. And in that time, I was part of a domestic violence situation. I was in and out of unhealthy relationships. And my worst one being my last one, which was my first husband, who chased me around on our wedding night and calling me names, threatening me, telling me it was the worst mistake he had ever made by marrying me. And he ended up throwing me on the bed and strangling me until I thought I was going to lose consciousness. Wow. And I remember looking at him and thinking, oh my gosh, the man that I married is going to be the man that kills me. And luckily, the darkness that was in his eyes left and he stepped away. I curled up in a ball. I started crying and I thought, I can't be married to this man, but I also can't tell anyone that I just got strangled on my wedding night. I was so mortified. My mom's from France. I had family from all over Europe that had come, all these people that I didn't want to let down, my minister that I'd grown up with, all of these people had been there. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And of course, he promised it would never happen again. And it was just so stressful and all of those things. And I wanted to believe him. And of course, that's, once you've crossed that line, I knew it intellectually, I knew it, but once you cross that line, there's really no going back. And so I for the next 5 years, he strangled me again. He would spit on me. He'd lose his temper, throw things around the house. He'd wake me up in the middle of the night, constantly belittling me, degrading me, telling me that I had, people didn't want to hear what I had to say because I was an extrovert, but I became more and more or less and less of an extrovert.
He was caging you up and like killing your spirit.
And we'd go out and he'd be like, shut up, people don't want to hear you. And I'd be like, oh, nobody wants to hear me. Like the person that I love is telling me that nobody wants to talk to me and nobody wants to hear me.
But I'm not good.
And you want to believe the person that you're like, this is the person that's supposed to be your best friend. So like, why would he not tell me that, like, if I'm doing something wrong, I would want to know. And so I really just started to get more and more introverted and felt less and less connected to other people. And I really just wasn't sharing at all to the extent of what I was going through. I would throw him out, let him back in. And then one day I had decided I was working a second job. I had let him quit his job so that I could work for the family household. Luckily we didn't have any kids. But I said, well, you'll go back to school, because he said like that's one of the reasons why he was so stressed out is because of work.
Sure.
And I said, even then, I was a teacher, so I was used to inspiring other people. So I said, go for it, quit your job. I will take care of the household expenses, fine, and I'll work, other jobs along the way. He quit his job. And I said, and in text message, he said, I quit my job. And I said, okay. And he had not given me money. I said, listen, sweetheart, please go back and get your job. And he said, just like typical cunt bitch Stephanie, not to support her husband. And I said, I looked at that and I said, I am not doing this anymore. And that was right around Cinco de Mayo. So that's coming up soon.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And 11 years ago. And from there on out, I actually thought that I could figure it out. So I was like, I have a background in psychology. I have all this, background. And I tried to figure it out. Things got worse. And I finally was like, you know what? I ended up in the hospital with a sprained ankle. I had this voice that said to me, you need to be your own knight in shining armor, but you need to get support. And in that moment, I realized I needed to do the work. I needed to do everything that I had to do to stop ending up with people that were toxic to me. And in that work, in that time of getting to know me, I realized that I needed to create a business. I needed to help other women realize, because as I started to heal, all of a sudden I started to have this light that was inside of me that I didn't even know was there. And it was like someone had taken off these gray glasses and suddenly it was bright and beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was stuck in this in so long in survival mode. I didn't even realize how bad things had gotten. Look at how much better the world is. I got to tell people. And so back to like going back to 17. Talking about Wayne Dyer in the beginning, I realized like, hey, the universe gives us what we want, even when we're like, not real. I would have never asked for it that way.
Highest good doesn't feel good.
Why would you give it to me this way? Thank you for giving me exactly what I wanted.
Well, if you had listened, Stephanie, it's like you went up the scale. You were like, oh, this is mildly abusive. Oh, I'm going to go, what else? What's the next level? What's the next level?
Yeah. I couldn't
write the same lesson until you learn it, but now the gift. And so you turned it into a gift through your hardship, which, there's quote ad nauseum, but what we go through is sometimes so that we can share it with others. We are like, the chosen one is very woo, but we are able to handle that so that we can give safety to others and lead the way. And then it's all reciprocal because you found support then that started your journey.
Yeah, it gives it meaning, I think. When I realized again, like, okay, I went through this and there is a reason for this. And I hate, sometimes it's like, why would there be a reason for some of the horrible things that go on in life? But I truly believe, the first time that I got on a podcast and shared my story with like, just like a sinking feeling in my stomach and like, oh my gosh, what if my ex hears this and what are people going to say? And, what's going to happen? And I so remember afterwards, the amount of people that I knew that reached out to me and said, excuse me, number one, I didn't know that you were going through that. Number two, I went through something similar, or I went through something traumatic. Here's my story. And it suddenly, and all of them said, I've never shared this with anyone before. So now all of a sudden, people that I knew I had opened up space to let them share a part of themselves they had never shared before. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this is happening to people that I know, imagine what can happen to people with people that I don't know, or like the bigger ripple effect of other people hearing this story and realizing that they're not alone.
Giving permission as part of your healing. And, now putting that out into the world for people to respond and realize that everybody's going through, well, not everybody, but like we're going through similar things, but we don't know that if we don't say anything about it. So you gave voice and you gave power back to people.
Yeah. And I think, we were talking about this before we went on, but, when I was going through the abuse, I don't even know if I would have called it abuse when I was in the relationship, even though, you know, I was strangled. You know, when I went for an order of protection and I spoke to the domestic violence shelter, as suggested by, I think, my lawyer or somebody. And they said, you know, they're like, all right, tell us some of the things that happened. And I was like, well, I was woken up in the middle of the night for special occasions. He'd called the police on me while I was sleeping. Like, he strangled me several times. Like, I started going through the list.
Yeah.
And I'm just like saying it, like it's just
celery, salad, bread, butter.
Exactly. And the look, like the look of the person who was helping me write the order of protection, she just stopped and her mouth was like agape. And she said, he strangled you? And I was like, yeah. She's like,
multiple times. Like, that's Tuesdays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And being called names and like all those things were just like normal. That was just in my survival mode. And she's like, you realize how quickly it could have killed you, more than a broken bone or a bruise or anything like that. And I think it was the first time that I finally realized how bad things really were. But I think that when you're in it, you don't realize it, number one. But number two, because we're so used to hearing domestic violence be broken bones and bruising and like all these really big, horrible things, when we're going through things that are abusive, we compare it to that and we're like, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as that other person, or I can't be the one who's being abused. That happens to somebody else. I'm the one who takes care of everybody. So I'm going to make sure that I keep my garden looking nice, even though there's weeds, you know, all under the surface waiting to come out. And I was just trying to like put out fires and survive and pretend like everything was okay, because I was comparing myself to other people's pain and feeling like I didn't really have much. Mine wasn't as bad, so I shouldn't be complaining about it.
And that is so huge, because like, why would we deny ourselves what we're going through in comparison to somebody else? We're allowed to have our pain, even if it's not as bad as it could be, because pain is pain regardless. And you know, if you can just come to resolve with it, name it, deal with it, and heal, then that is the whole point, right? So it doesn't have to be some big dramatic thing. And so, you know, the scale that you describe to me sounds like, oh my God, and old me would like diminish my own story in an unhealthy relationship. But now, like that was a defining moment for me to say, no more of this crap. Like, I will not tolerate this. And he never laid hands on me, but he was abusive and manipulative and like controlling and just, you know, kind of wanted to keep me locked up at home, Rapunzel style. So there's different ways that we experience that. And it's my divine right, I guess, you know, to feel the pain that was, and to say it's not okay and leave it, because that comes into our worthiness. And part of, you know, raising our overall well-being on the planet would be for everybody to just step into that worthiness and say it's not okay to be treated like shit, no matter if it's like bird shit or buffalo shit, period.
Well, and I think, and you know, I can only speak from a female perspective, but I have seen, or I have felt that women were supposed to look pretty and act a certain way and be a certain way. And if we're not that certain way, then we are bitchy, or we're too opinionated, or we're too, you know, we're given all these horrible names if we don't fit the standard of what, you know, society says we're supposed to be. So, you know, most of us, we learn not to bother. We don't want to bother other people. We don't want to
burden people, or be troublesome, and like speak up too much.
Well, and I really, you know, I'm thinking as we're saying this, that I remember even thinking like, well, what if I'm making a bigger deal of this and it actually is? Like second guessing myself, like, getting spit on the middle of the night. Yeah, that's pretty bad. You know, like, but again, it was like this part of me that number one was like, this can't be happening. Number one, number two, you know, maybe I'm doing something wrong to make this happen. What if I'm, you know, what if this is something that really does go on? I am
bad. I do deserve this.
I do deserve this. But even like he would say to me, like, you don't know what happens in other people's relationships. Like, No, I don't. And,
Mm.
and I remember saying to him, but there has to be, you have to be able to talk better to each other. And he was like, nah, you believe that everything is unicorn and lollipops.
Mm.
And I was like, no, but I'd like to believe that people can speak more, more nicely to each other. And he would just, but again, you question everything because they make you
Yeah. Second
unsure.
guess yourself. Yeah. Gaslighting, right? Manipulation. Yeah. Narcissism, all of those things.
Yeah.
And it is hard to wake up from that dream because they're, I don't know, you are the good one. So you want to trust and you want to give and you want to be committed and you want to be in it. So yeah, it's disillusioning for sure. But what's comes to me too from what you just said about, what's expected of women, I'm going like, oh, this is so interesting because in ancient times, women were revered in goddess form, right? And were almighty and powerful and held special gifts and talents and were admired and worshipped. And there's been a huge disconnect over time from that, even from ancient ritual practices, which kind of, I don't know, they just anchor us into more than ourselves. So we've become a very individualized society, right? A very selfish and self-based society. So when you take steps like what you're doing to get free and then to help others get free, we can bring some of that energy back and some of that rebalancing back into the world.
It's funny that you gave that example because my first husband really put me, I was on a pedestal. And so, I had to have, when we got together and I had like a great body, had a great job, I was making great money, I was very successful, I was doing a lot of great things. And in fact, he told me, you were out of my range. I didn't even think it would be possible for someone like you to date me. Well, that should have told me a lot, but whatever. So, but the interesting thing is that with narcissists and potential borderline personality disorder, being a sociopath, any of those three and three together makes it extra because my friends, they're tough. But instead of being like, wow, that's great that I have this amazing woman, it was like, once we got married, it was, why aren't you home cooking me dinner? Why aren't you doing these things like making me like the man of the house, which was not that before we got married. I mean, there were plenty of red flags that I ignored, but it was almost like, instead of him saying, I'm going to level up and be a better version of myself to meet you with you, it was let me bring you down to my level to make you feel worse than me. So it was almost like a thing for him to do everything in his power to bring me down, which he was becoming successful at, and so over time, that wearing down, and and I never thought I was better than anybody. I didn't think that. He was the one, when he would have moments of clarity, that would tell me like, you were this great, wonderful woman. And, his own insecurities were trying to bring me down and make me feel bad.
Yeah, of course, the crab in the bucket. So if you don't, okay. So that story, and listeners, if you don't know that story, go and Google it. It's very applicable in the business context where you've been listening to my show. You'll have heard me reference it before. So just go Google it and check it out and be aware, because people will do that because they feel less good about themselves and don't want to take the steps that it takes to grow, and will take it out on you. And that's like blocking the sun. And that's just not okay. So now you have released out of all of that. Let's talk about that healing journey. And then, seeing as we're so in this content, let's stay in it because it's juicy. So let's talk about the coming out of it, the growing the business, and then the bringing in of your husband, David.
They're going back to being in the emergency room, and kind of funny. Yes. So when I had my aha epiphany moment, my ex-husband was in the room with me, which made it almost like I literally started crying. Like thing. So I started doing, and literally, and the reason why, because I was a teacher, and on record, there was my ex-husband's name as my point of contact. So they automatically, when I sprained my ankle and they said I had to go to the emergency room, they called him. And so I walk in and I'm like, oh God, he's here. There's the doctor there telling me it's severely sprained or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I have to do this differently. Because in the past, I have a degree in psychology. I'm a certified crisis counselor. I have all of this knowledge that I had used to help other people that I had not been using
Blind to yourself,
myself.
of course. Yeah.
Because you can't see it. You know, I always say you can't read the label from inside the bottle. I couldn't tell what I was doing wrong. I mean, I'll take that back. I knew intellectually some of the things. I just didn't know how to make anything different, because that's how that's how life had been for me. So, but in that moment, I realized, okay, what can I do that's different? So I got a therapist. I started going to, because I also realized I needed to create my business. So I got a coach. And at that time, I didn't really know of any like relationship or, you know, toxic relationship coaches. I had a business coach.
Okay.
And the business coach was basically, I would just check in with her once a week. So I really started creating a team of people to make sure that I was around people that were going to help me get out of this hole that I had dug myself in. And one of them was also making sure, like in that team, was being around positive people.
Yeah.
So when I started to do the work, I started to realize, wow, most of my friends are in really crappy relationships. Right. Mine on the outside seemed better than some of theirs, when really probably mine was worse. But I was comparing myself to what I was seeing from theirs. And I was like, oh, theirs is a total mess, because they were being more in your face with how messed up their relationships were.
They didn't care if they were in public or at home.
Yeah.
They're just like mean to each other everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Where for me, it was like behind closed doors was different. Yeah. And it started to, at that point, at the end, it started to seep out into the rest of the world too. Yeah, sure. But I just said, I have to stay away from those people. And I need to be around people that I feel good with, that I'm seeing good relationships that I feel good with. So I really thinned the herd of people that I hung out with. And, you know, I really started to look for who I was. And that's one of the things, like when I work with clients, we do a whole, so we come from a really holistic perspective, because that's what I use. I mean, I share with my clients what I use, what was effective for me. And, you know, making sure that you have that team, figuring out how you got here. Like, why did I end up in 18 plus years of toxic relationships? Yeah. Well, because of my upbringing, because of what I experienced, what I saw. That's, you know, and when I wrote my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, the feeling that I had during my healing process was that another aha moment of, wow, love to me had always felt, I associated subconsciously love with stress, discomfort, fighting for, anxiety, all of these things. So when I felt those things, that was part of what love was, because that was my natural go-to. When I started to do the work, and I remember specifically being with some friends and I remember saying this, she's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I get it. She was like, are you okay? What do you get? I was like, I finally get what love is. And she, you know, I'm like 35, 36 years old. And she's like, okay. And I was like, no, I've never understood until this moment that love is comfort, is inspiration, is calm, is safe. I mean, all of those words I had never associated with love before. So I had to change what home felt like to me, what love felt like to me. Yeah. And so that was another piece, which is something that, you know, we want to make sure that our clients start to learn that, to go subconsciously and figure out what is love to you? Because if you grew up with love being uncomfortable, you're going to search out love that's uncomfortable. And that's going to be, you're going to be like, oh, found the great guy. And you're going to end up in the same types of toxic.
Well, you're going to think you did. So this speaks to the example of those drawings that have two images, and depending on your perspective, you see one or the other. And, you know, if we take that deeper into the context, even though it might look like this, it's not actually what's serving you, and you do need to shift that. And what is an easy way to get out of your own way is to have other people come in and take a look, trusted people that have your best interest in mind, to help you remove that fog and plant new seeds, right?
And I love that example that you just gave, because it's before I did the work, what was attractive to me would not be attractive now.
Yeah. Damn right. And never forget it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean,
I know it's like, how was I even that? How it's like I was, I don't know, like a frog, and now I'm a human. Like I just, how was that even?
Why was I so
radar?
blinded and fighting so hard for this relationship for that? Like I seriously have seen like exes, and I'm like, wow, what was I thinking? I'm sure people that are listening have had that experience too, where they're like, whoa, that was, and I fought for that. I fought really hard to keep that.
But one of the beautiful things in that is it's a very tangible way to appreciate the growth that we go through, right? So like painting a room is an instant gratification, a refresh, a change. Weight loss takes time, but when you lose, 25 pounds, say, it's very satisfying. But personal growth shows up in the way that the universe starts responding to you. And that can be less tangible, particularly as formed adults who, we've come with years of pre-program or like automatic programming in a way, picking up everything along the way. And now recognizing that contrast is like, oh man, yes, like this feels good and I want more. And then you can, continue to find ways to expand in this new self.
Once it starts to like double and triple the work that you put in. So, when you first start out trying to work on yourself and it feels so weird because it's not what you normally do.
Yeah.
So whether it's self-development, whether it's, creating your business, like whatever it is, it's out of your comfort zone because that's not what you've done before. So when you start doing it, you're like, this all feels weird because naturally you want to do something that's the opposite of that. But that's what got you into the same exact patterns that you've been in that you're not trying to follow again. So you kind of have to fight your brain a little bit when you first start. But then once that becomes now a new habit and it becomes part of who you are and what you do, now all of a sudden, now you're like, okay, cross that. Now I'm on to here. Now what's the next thing that I need to overcome and learn and grow? And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, whoa, even like they always say with a pilot, 1 degree difference can change the whole direction of the airplane. Well, same thing for us. That little bit of change that's daily happening to you as you are committed to your growth. All of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, I am so far from where I was. I mean,
let's go there. Tell us. And I want to hear about what it was like to date in between the healing and up to meeting David too, because I think there's a lot of tangible, context to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say, so if you would have told me 15 years ago that I would be helping women heal from toxic relationships, I would have been like, yeah, right. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, so I mean, the big difference, I think that after I really committed to really finding myself and creating my team and going on adventures and doing all of the things, I really got to a point where when I first ended the relationship, I thought, I'm afraid of being alone. I was afraid, I was 34 years old. I wanted to have a family. There were things that I wanted. And I was so afraid of like, I'm this, this woman that's in her mid 30s and everybody's married and having kids and all that. And I was feeling very much like I was separated from everybody. And I didn't feel very good at first, and then as I started to do the work, I was like, I got to a point where I said, I actually am so free that I am okay if I end up, and I grieved a little bit, but I'm okay if I don't have children. Yeah. I'm okay if I don't get married. Like maybe that's just not going to happen for me. So what am I going to do instead? So I really started to really focus on things like creating my business, of traveling, of really creating a life that I was so excited to wake up to every day. That I really was okay. I had a great group of friends. I did great things. I could just go places, without having to talk to anybody about it. I would have a great time every weekend. I never, ever, ever felt lonely. And because of that, when I started to go through the dating, I was like, you know what? I'll date for fun. I call it, when I tell clients, I call it dating for educational purposes only.
Or testing, testing yourself and your boundaries.
It was not only, it wasn't even that. It was like, what do I like? What do I want in a relationship?
Right.
So it's like, let me go take notes. All right, this is what I liked about this guy. Blah, 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 blah. I didn't like this. Okay, cool. Next. And just like go on a whole bunch of dates. And so I really did that. But it was because I went in with, I'm okay with never getting into a relationship again. I went in purely to learn. So like, the people that came on too strong, the people that were too pushy, the people that told me too much too soon, which we could do a whole podcast just on those weird dates, I'm sure. But, all of that. And I realized like, what is it that I would want if I was going to get into another relationship? And so I had kind of created this list of like, this would be like my guy. This would be my ideal person of what I'm looking for. And actually I met a few good guys on the way, but they weren't who I was looking for. There was one in particular that had so much that checked off my list, but he still wasn't where he needed to be. And I was like, I'm not looking for potential. I'm looking for where someone is, because I dated potential too many times. Now I want to, where you are you ready to come with me and do all the great things that I'm already doing? And so I met this really great guy who checked off a lot of things on my list. In fact, pretty much all of them. And I thought, okay, well, let's go on a date. So like we went on a date because we met online. And we, like, the first time we ever talked, we had a great conversation, and I felt a little like excited. I'm like, okay, this is weird, but I don't want to overly get excited about it but it was the first time in a long time that I'd actually felt excited about a date. We went on the date, we stayed up like all night, we talked and just had a wonderful time. And he pretty quickly was like, hey, I'm interested in dating you exclusively. And I was like, I'm not ready to date you exclusively. I'm dating other people. I don't know what I want. He's like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell anybody else that I'm dating that I'm not interested in them anymore. But if you want to keep dating other people, that's up to you. Right. And I was like, that's weird.
I want you, even if you don't want me.
Yeah, he's like, and I'll wait. He's like, but if you're just totally not interested, let me know. But just know that I have interest in you. And so I was like, that's just weird, that because everybody else that I ever dated would have been like, you'd better stop. Because even like the other guys I was seeing were like, you'd better stop dating that other guy if you want to continue with me. And I was like, that feels icky. I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. I've already experienced that. So, this guy that was like just totally letting me be me and supporting it and saying, hey, I just find you to be fun and interesting, and I love talking to you and spending time with you, and I'll take what I can get with you, and being so not pushy. And finally, it was so funny. We had been kind of seeing each other for a few weeks, and I kept trying to break up with him. He would come to see me, and I think to myself, he's just a really good guy, and I'm not sure that I really want that. Let me break up with him. And then I'd see his big blue eyes and I'd be like, oh, fine. Okay, I'm going to not break up with him, because I feel like something really felt wrong if I broke up with him. And so I kept saying, all right, we'll keep going. We'll see where this happens. And then finally one day I was like, you know what? I'm going to not date anybody else. I'm just going to give you a total, the full chance and see what happens. And the look of like he had just won the lotto was so cute. He was like, really? I was like, you would be terrible at poker. Like, you just were like, here's my hands. Do you like what I have? And I was like, okay. But it was so sweet and so genuine and so wonderful. And so we're coming up on 8 years of being married in July. Cool. And we have 2 beautiful children. We have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. And the cool thing is that because he was not only who I was looking for as a partner, we also had similar things that we wanted for our future. So, making sure that you have those same values, the same morals, expectations in life, and things like that. One of the things that we connected on was we both wanted to go into business. And he was a Reiki master teacher. He did something called Psych K, which is something we use with clients now, which is for subconscious belief work. And he like all these other things. And I'm like, he's got some good things that could help me if we were going to create a business. And so we both had that mentality of business type of stuff. And so we actually now have been running our business full time together for the past 3 years. So we've been married for almost 8, but we've been working together exclusively for the past 3 years. And I couldn't imagine a better partner in my business, along with being my best friend, in regular life as well, to really share this sometimes crazy journey with.
It is a crazy journey, right? Because each month is a little bit different. And as the business grows, you have to grow to keep up with where it's at. So, my analogy to that is how, as our children's change, so does our parenting. So we have to meet them where they are. And a business is its own entity. And, you got to keep feeding it and fine tuning yourself along the way as well.
Because there's times where you're like, we got this. Like
Yes.
we've had months where we're like, we got this. This is no big deal at all. And then there's other months where you're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing wrong? What's happening? And like, but it was great before. What's going on? So there definitely is that ebb and flow that could be stressful, but again, I think that when you have, we're best friends in and out of the relationship, whether it's business or in our relationship. I mean, it's still, we deal with the stress and communicate it together. So even when, like, I know that he'll be a little bit more focused on doing work and not want to do as much family stuff when things are not going as well on the business. So I see him like dial in, and I have to, and I know that, like, I can tell, like, he wants to be just focused on what he's doing. Where I, when things start to not go as well, I like need a break. I'm like, I need to just remove myself, but knowing your partner so well and knowing how each of you deals differently with stress, or how each one of you deals when things aren't going perfectly, and also being excited to be able to share when things are going well.
Yeah.
Is to be able to have that partnership together and know each other that way.
Yeah, it's I was trying to think of because I love coming up with words. It's like spousalpreneur.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm all about smashing the word solopreneur, because whether you are your own CEO growing your business or not, you don't have to do it alone. And working in this dream team couple situation can be super, super fun, and it can bring the relationship even closer, because entrepreneurship, like you say, the roller coaster could be stressful, a lot more stressful on your own. But if you have somebody to weather the storm with and to get you out of your own head and cast another line forward, then you can continue to feel supported as you deal with the issues and fine tune the business and keep going. So how big is the team now in your business?
It's still just us. We've had setters, had other people on the team before. We do have it just him and I. Sometimes we outsource things depending on what's going on. But I think that one of the things that's really great also about having, the couple and having the shared workload is that everyone has different talents. Everyone has things that they're better at. So, I'm pretty much, as much as he still works with clients, I'm really the face of the business, because we do work with women who are professional women who have been in toxic relationships. So that's really who we focus on. So, most of the podcasts and the speaking engagements and things like that is me. I've written 2 books, and I've been on the news and New York Weekly, and those really cool things. And those are my things. He is. So I'm the CEO, he's the COO, so he does all the back end stuff. He is very good. He's a great writer. So I can write some stuff and then he makes it look beautiful, where I would have had to pay someone to be an editor. When I first started the business and he was not in the business yet, I was paying someone to edit, or I was paying someone to do the graphics or to do my website or things like that. He can do all of those things. So I think there's, and even when we work with clients, I always kind of say I'm the more grounded one, where I'm from, we're both from New York, which is funny, but I'm much more to the point, direct. Right. Let's talk about the problem that you're going through. Yeah. I also have the experience of being in a toxic relationship, so I understand where people are coming from.
Cut the flat slate on me.
Yeah, and he's more the spiritual one. So I keep him grounded. If he's the one that would be up in the ether somewhere flying off, I keep him grounded. But because we both have these different abilities, he helps me see a little bit more of my spiritual side, and I help him stay a little bit more grounded when it comes to clients. So we also have different perspectives, where when clients work with us, they're getting the grounded and the spiritual one. They're getting a male and a female perspective. They're getting that difference that really helps, because sometimes people, they just love him. you know, and they're like, yeah, Stephanie, whatever. But what does David have to say? You know, and then sometimes it's the other way around, like, yeah, David, stop talking. Stephanie, what are you know, so it really is interesting to have those two different perspectives to really give a more holistic, you know, support to clients and for your business as well.
And to be a true can be example of where the healing can go. And that, you know, you're not just talking shit, like you are living and breathing through your journey, gives you credibility and gives tangible evidence to those women who are just starting to see, you know, the possibility and the alternative reality that could be there if they so choose and trust in themselves to start that process. And so that is extremely, extremely powerful. And, you know, I would even go so far to say that experiencing David through the business can help heal and rebuild trust in men for them too,
100%.
to see that it's not just one way and that there are good guys out there and you can have one too.
It's true. And that's, you know, and we joke around because, you know, we'll have clients that say, I want my David. And, you know, so David will joke around about like, see, you know, they want their David. I'm like, well, they can't have you. They have to have a version of you. But, you know, I think he's also, David, my husband is very, he is very spiritual. He is very much heart-centered. He is very much, he leads from such a place that's very different from what a lot of other men are like, you know. And so for women to see this man that comes across more like he listens and he's more soft when his approach with things, you know, when women have only experienced aggressive, you know, that toxic masculinity that's there, it's such a breath of fresh air to see that's possible. There's
like unicorns are real. Well, I'm looking at one. No way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, this has been quite a conversation. And like, I feel like I could talk to you for weeks because there's so many different streams of discussion in what we've talked about. And I hope that the listeners, like, you can hear in between the lines of all these parallels of Stephanie's journey and how, you know, it impacts your business and your development and your worthiness. And I'll break some of that out when I do my marketing for this. But Stephanie, I'm so glad that we did have this time to sit down and to get into this stuff. It was very activating for me and reminded me of some things that I kind of put on a shelf and put away, like, you know, of what I've overcome in life. And yet maybe it's not a Hollywood blockbuster, but I deserve my own credit for where I've come from. And you know, I feel like in this conversation, people will take that in for themselves too, and really appreciate what has happened to get to this point, the work that's gone in.
I hope so. I mean, that really is my hope for anyone who's listening, is no matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've overcome, anything is possible for you. You know, you can take that. I mean, you get to a point in life, you know, we've all experienced some kind of trauma. I mean, that's just part of being alive. And so if you can take that, whatever you've experienced before, and use that as fuel to make those changes and really create something different, and to look back and be like, damn, I'm badass. Like, look at what I'm doing now.
That's right.
And just remind yourself of the possibilities. It is possible for you to create whatever it is that you want for your life, to remind yourself that you are the creator of your life. You know, you don't have to let your past define who you are now.
That's right. Beautiful. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This has been just so energizing.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody for listening and tuning in. And if I can be of service to anyone, you know, feel free to reach out. My goal to really be able to help people. And, you know, we help men and women, but we really do. My passion really is focusing on women, because I understand that all of those fears that come along with admitting we need help, admitting that we don't know all the answers, admitting that we're not where we want to be in our lives, and saying, hey, I need something to change, because I know that there's more for me out there. I just don't know how to create it.
Absolutely.